This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Hi, friends. I'm Carrie Jo, and this is Holy Chuckles Podcast. This is a space for honest faith, lived experiences, and shining a light in the places we've learned to hide. I'm not here to explain faith. I'm here to live it out loud. So take a breath and let's make room for what's real. Welcome back to Holy Chuckles Podcast. I'm really glad you're here. In my last episode, I talked about verse 34, and I want to continue in that verse because I've had to skip a couple of days of doing any episodes because I realized I was still setting in that verse. I've been talking about the unnamed man coming to Eli and giving him this message. And what happens to your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be a sign to you. They will both die on the same day. And I started thinking about Eli and what it meant for him to receive this message. Can you imagine knowing that your two kids are going to die on the same day? And one, there's nothing you can do about it. Two, you can't run up and tell them. And three, maybe in some way you could have stopped it, but now it's gone too far. And this is what's going to happen because the unnamed man, Bob, started out his whole message, "Thus saith the Lord." And Eli knew everything that Bob was saying was true because Eli's a priest and he has heard these types of messages from God. But now he's got to leave it alone because it's not even him anymore. It's really Hophni and Phinehas. They're adults. They know better. They've been taught better. And now it's their time to take accountability because their father, the head priest, already set them down and had a conversation with them. They chose not to change. They chose to keep with the same behavior. In fact, their behavior got worse. They chose to live in ego and performance and not honor what God had entrusted with them. That has to be a hard position for a parent. I have a hard time just watching my cat suffer. I have this cat named Tiny Terrorist. I call him Tiny for short. And I've been making his food. And for the first couple of weeks or so, he's loved it. And he couldn't wait to have it. In fact, when I made a fresh batch, I found him up on the counter licking the fresh batch, and it was too hot for him to even have. So I knew that he liked the food, he enjoyed the food, but I decided to make it with a different meat. I had been using chicken and salmon, and I decided to do ground turkey and salmon. And I had added a little pumpkin in it. Let me tell you, we were at a standoff. We have been at a standoff. And the only thing he would eat were these stupid treats that I give him every now and again. But this cat would wear me down with the meows and the sad looks. And he would have a bowl full of fresh food, but he would not eat it. All he wanted to eat was treats. After a while, I'm sitting here arguing with this little cat saying you can't just have treats. It's not good for you. You have to have more than just treats. And no, he could not talk to me, but his little meow said, I want my treats. I don't want that food. I don't like it. So we were at a standoff. I was not giving treats. He was not eating food. I would doctor the food up in different ways, but he still was not having it. And that was difficult for me to be in this standoff with this little feline. Can you imagine how Eli must have felt knowing eventually something was going to happen to his boys and he couldn't say anything? He couldn't forewarn them. He couldn't do anything. I can't even be in a standoff with my cat for more than 72 hours before throwing the food out, making a fresh batch with just chicken. Yes, the cat wore me down. Yes, I made a fresh batch. And now he's eating his food. He didn't like the turkey. I couldn't even be strong and let my cat just eat the food that I made him. I lasted 3 days. Can you imagine Eli having this information, having to sit with it daily, having to watch his boys eat, drink, interact with them, knowing that at some point they wouldn't be here? The strength it took for him to understand what had happened, for him to have taken accountability within himself for the things that he didn't or did do, and now just sit with this information. How hard that must have been. And I feel that because I didn't even have the strength to not make my cat fresh new food because he didn't like the other. And then when I think of this, I also think of the other side. I think of now Eli knows what's going to happen. And now every moment is precious. Every moment could be the last moment. Eli probably was making the best of every moment with his boys, even though his boys were jerks. His boys were treating everyone and everything wrong. They were like two little Dennis the Menace running around, just causing havoc everywhere they went. But those were still his boys. He was still their father. And every moment he had with them, he was going to treasure. Eli didn't run out and try to save them. Eli knew he couldn't. He was going to just have to let the cards fall where they may. And if you think about Eli and you think about how God loves us, it kind of was the same way. Eli allowed his boys free will, even though Eli didn't agree with it, even though Eli didn't understand why they were doing it, even though Eli had shown them how to be a priest, how to be a good priest. They were adults. They were in this position. Eli had to allow them to be. Isn't that what God does? Doesn't God allow us to be? Eli's sons didn't ask for help. Eli's sons didn't come to him and say, hey, we have no clue what we're doing. Or, hey, I think we made some mistakes along the way. Can you help us out? They didn't come to Eli to ask for assistance. God never stops loving us. Eli never stopped loving his sons. God never leaves us. Eli never left his sons. When we're doing the stuff that we shouldn't be doing, God is with us. God doesn't stick his God hand out and slap our hand. God allows us to continue because that's what we choose and that's what we're here to do. We are here to live our life. And if we don't want God to be a part of that, that's okay. That's our choice. And God's not going to step in. And that's what Eli did. Eli said, okay, you've been honored with this position. Eli taught them the position. They watched Eli as they grew up. And then when it was given to them, Eli said, this is yours. And Eli had to step back. But when things got out of hand and it started affecting the people of Israel, that's when Eli should have stepped in, and he didn't. That's why God had to send the unnamed man, because God had to step in, not to course correct Hophni and Phinehas. God stepped in, and Eli should have stepped in because it was affecting the people of Israel. When God has to step in, sometimes it's not about you. It's about the people that you are affecting in a negative way. So God has to step in because the people of Israel didn't deserve that. And sometimes the people around you don't deserve what's happening to them because of the decisions you're making. And then I thought about Hophni and Phinehas as my unhealthy patterns. Because in my life, that's what my Hophni and Phinehas are, my unhealthy patterns. And I realized, because I tried to record an episode 2 days ago and I couldn't. I guess I should say I could, and I did. Actually recorded it twice and didn't even listen to them to edit them. I just deleted them because for some reason something was pulling at me that something wasn't right, that something within me wasn't agreeing with me moving on to the next verse because I was still living in verse 34. And the realization that came is that my unhealthy patterns that are dying off are something that have to be honored. I talk a lot about honoring myself and honoring what God entrusted to me, which is me. And just like Eli, knowing this information that his sons are going to die at some point in time, Eli spending every minute with them that he could, enjoying every second, doesn't matter how they acted, doesn't matter the things they did, it doesn't matter how they affected Israel. Those are still his sons. And Eli was going to honor his fatherhood by loving on his boys, being with his boys. So Eli was going to honor those moments while still honoring God by not saying anything. And I realized that my unhealthy patterns, my survival patterns, helped me survive up until this moment of my life. And those patterns may not serve me now, but they served me then. They were my survival strategies. I had to learn to survive at a younger age than some people might have. And those patterns of people pleasing, over serving others, fixing everyone, controlling everyone, staying hyper responsible, those patterns help me survive to get right here. And although those survival patterns helped me, they also depleted me. They exhausted me. They disconnected me from me. They disconnected me from God. I ignored my own needs, but it doesn't mean that I don't honor them. I honor those patterns. I am grateful and thankful that I was able to figure out those ways to survive. Because had I not, I may not be here today. Had I not figured those ways out, I might not have had the kind of life that I did. I might have turned to drugs. I might have turned to alcohol more than I did. I might have turned to other very destructive patterns that would not have served me. And I may not be standing here today. So I'm thankful for those patterns that helped me survive. And the reason that I was having such a hard time moving on from this verse is because I hadn't sat with myself and said, thank you. Thank you to these patterns for helping me to survive, to helping me get through that part of my life. Thank you. Thank you, patterns. But now it's time for you to go. because I've learned a different way. And it's not a way of survival. And those patterns are slowly dying off. I just said I wanted to move on to the next verse. And I did. I got up the next day and I started to record, and something didn't feel good. Something felt off. That was me trying to use one of those survival patterns to go, okay, now it's on to the next verse. When my body, my mind, my soul was like, nope, we're not ready. We haven't released what we need to release. We still need a couple of days of honoring our patterns, of grieving our patterns, of letting these unhealthy patterns go. They've been a part of us for so, so long. And now we got to let it go. But I needed time to grieve those patterns. I find it interesting. We're in the middle of my anniversary week. My ex-wife and I, we had our legal ceremony. We called it the nupties on the 7th of March, 2020. And then we had our wedding in Mexico the following Saturday, which was March 14th, 2020. I find God so humorous. I really do. And I hope that in your walk and in your life with God, that you also get to experience the humor that God has, because it is diabolical. It is fantastic. Here I am going through all of this, my patterns dying off, me grieving the relationship that I have had with these patterns, right smack dab in the middle of me grieving this past relationship within this anniversary week. And not only that, this year, 2026, March 7th was on a Saturday. March 14th is in 2 days on a Saturday. Our nupties were on a Saturday. Our wedding was on a Saturday. All of this is just so comical to me. And as I'm grieving this relationship, because yes, we had our divorce last year in 2025 in the middle of the year, but we were still talking. We were still involved with one another on our last anniversary. So this anniversary is really the first anniversary of no contact, no speaking, no being involved with one another. And it's really that grieving process that I'm going through within this relationship. So I'm grieving the marriage that I had. I'm grieving the patterns that I had. And I'm right here in verse 34. I realized that when my ex-wife and I did get married, really that nuptial ceremony was for me. I enjoyed that ceremony because it was very just chill, t-shirts and shorts. It was in a backyard, everybody just enjoying each other. It was very easy and relaxed. And so last Saturday on the 7th is really when these kind of emotions hit me hard. And after that, this week, my mind has been, yeah, okay, good. We grieved. We're good. Let's move on. But my body and my spirit has been, wait a minute. We're not ready. Mind, you may be ready to move on because that's how you process things, but we're still in it. We're still processing. We are still going through it. My nervous system is like, hold up, mind, you are not the one in charge. I am. And I'm still processing. I'm still going through things. And I need to release. And my old pattern would have been just to push through this and move on. Because I had my cry, I had my moment. Now it's time for us to move on. But I'm having to listen to my body, my nervous system, and say, wait a minute, we're not all on the same page. So let's set back, let's relax, let's go through this. And that has been difficult for me. And I know just like Hophni and Phinehas are going to die, these patterns are also going to die because they don't serve me anymore. Those patterns were functioning in a system that doesn't exist anymore. And that's why they have to die off. Those patterns were existing inside me in a corrupt system. The system I had before served a purpose. It got me here. But that system no longer exists because I made different choices. I made different choices not to survive anymore. And when you make a choice not to survive, when you make a choice and go to God and say, okay, I'm done. Thank you. Please take over. This vessel is yours. I can't run it anymore. It now becomes a different system, and the patterns that you had before no longer can run in this system. Those patterns can no longer exist. And it was the same for Israel. Hophni and Phinehas were running a corrupt system. And that system, God said, can no longer exist because it's affecting my people of Israel. The only way to release that corrupt system is for it not to exist anymore. And that's why Hophni and Phinehas had to die. That system could no longer exist. It was the same thing within my system. When I cried out to God and said, I'm done, I want to be your vessel, the system that was running inside me before could no longer exist. And that is what's happening now. It's dying off for this new system, these new healthier patterns to take over. And in that, I'm grieving everything. I'm grieving the life I once lived and everything that that entailed: marriage, friends, jobs, the way that I was, how I existed. I'm grieving all of that. And it's not an easy thing to do. Releasing who you were or who you thought you were. It's not easy, but I'm so grateful that God is holding me through this. I'm so grateful that God is guiding me through this. I'm so grateful that God is allowing me through these passages to understand what is going on, because I think if I had to do this without having some type of understanding, I would probably drive myself nuts. I am a person that thinks all the time. Scenarios go in my head all the time. I used to spiral out all the time. And I'm so grateful that I'm at a place in my life where my nervous system is healing. And so I'm calmer, I'm grounded, and I can understand these verses and how they relate to me in my life. And every day it's about making a choice of what feels good in my system. I didn't realize the system that I had before, the system that was running in me before, that survival system, had me on edge, had me on go all the time, had me believing that my worth was only in what I could provide, had me thinking that I couldn't be loved unless I provided something. And I'm so grateful that that system is dying off. That misalignment with myself, with God, with my authenticity is dying off. And I'm grateful that I've had time to say thank you, to honor those patterns, to honor the skills I learned to survive. And I'm so grateful for those lessons because going forward in my life, I will know what that feels like. I will know what that looks like. And I can say, okay, that's not what we do anymore. Why are we doing it? What is happening? What is going on that is taking us back to those feelings? And now I know moving forward, I won't be living in that survival mode because I understand it. I can make the course corrections when I'm starting to feel misaligned to get back into alignment. And that's what happened a couple of days ago when I started recording an episode and it didn't feel good. I was not aligned with what I was doing. And when I didn't feel that alignment, I had to stop and say, okay, what's going on? We're not ready to move on. We have to sit in the, I wasn't ready to move on. I needed to sit in it. I needed to grieve those patterns, just like I'm grieving the marriage that I had. And grieving doesn't always look like balled up on the couch with a blanket, watching sad movies, eating chocolate. Sometimes grieving is just being in the moment and saying, okay, yes, I feel this. Yes, I understand this. Yes, I'm just going to be in these emotions until they move forward. So this week, I'm just grieving. And maybe tomorrow I'll feel like doing an episode. Maybe I won't. Maybe tomorrow I'll be ready to move on to verse 35. Maybe I won't. I know I'm doing things differently and I'm doing things based on my alignment and how I'm staying in that alignment with myself and with God. And this is very new for me because in my past I would have pushed through. And now I'm just having to sit in it and be okay with it and talk to God a lot about it. And sometimes me talking to God is me yelling, saying, I don't understand. Sometimes me talking to God is saying, I don't like this. I don't want it. And sometimes it's just me and God sitting in silence and God holding me through it. So in your life, if you're growing, if you're releasing the system that used to serve who you used to be, and you're releasing those patterns that helped you survive, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to honor those patterns that once helped you survive. And it's okay to take a breath and pause because you're feeling those old patterns trying to take charge again, even when they're on their last leg, even when you know they are being released. Sometimes they're going to try to come up and take charge again. And you have to say, nope, we're not doing that anymore. That's not how we handle life. That's not how we handle situations. That's not how I handle myself. This feels out of alignment. And you take a breath and you pause and you say, okay, God, I'm feeling those old feelings again. Help me through this. And sometimes you have to put down your microphone and not record. Sometimes you have to hit delete after you've already recorded. But the main thing is that you follow that alignment and you stay in that alignment. And if it doesn't feel aligned, you don't move forward until it does. Because the most important lesson learned when we're releasing the patterns that no longer serve us is understanding why those patterns existed in the first place. Because when we understand, we then can grieve and release.